our topic is about the cross-sectional analysis of the technology of the teachers of the student opinion on the COVID-19 pandemic. So first of all, we would love to share about the impact of the technology on the teachers and the student on the teaching and learning. So the use of the internet to further medical education is a novel concept that's gaining popularity quickly. So it's allowed the student to study when it's most convenient for them and with a lesser price. So the technology, the online learning enable the student to make the effective use of both offline and online resources. So several of the researcher, they stated that the blended learning or the e-learning in the conjunction with the traditional classroom training to maximize the benefits of both learning environments. Also stated by Bharti Etian in 2021, the recent requests for change in the medical education and training system have highlighted the need to use the IT to enhance the educational process. So the more process was made toward this goal during the COVID-19 timeframe. However, there will always be some of the problem to overcome with the teacher and the student. So the pre-implementation survey of the student and the teachers are very necessary to determine how the best of the implement e-learning. So in light of the COVID-19 epidemic, the region has lately witnessed a lockdown of all forms of the society, so including the educational institutions. So that's why the traditional education institutions like college consider e-learning is a quick fix. So many institutions have benefited from digital learning tools, even if they are not functioning at total capacity. Most of the colleges and the university now use some kinds of online education to teach the medical student. So the COVID-19, on the other hand, they had raised the questions about the clinical sections, the backbone of medical education for imparting the clinical abilities. So the result of the study were published in 2021 by Nimavat. Also of the World Health Organization, WHO, is one of the international organizations that recognize the value of the e-learning in healthcare educations, especially for those living in less developed regions. So until the COVID-19 outbreak, the utilization of the e-learning for uploading the lecture notes, course material, the feedbacks, and issuing mark works at the bare minimum among the professor and the students. So that's why the purpose of the study was to assess the current level of understanding of e-learning amongst the professors and the student, as well as to identify any further needs for the e-learning implementation in the future. So at the medical university, prospective cross-sectional study was carried out beginning on March 2021 and continuing through April 2022. So the size of the sample was determined with the assistance of the process found in the online sample size calculator. So the criteria that were used for the calculation included the margin error of 2% and a confidence interval of 95% and a prevalence of 50%. So the participants of the study were informed the objective of the research and given assurance that their confidentiality would be maintained. And an electronic invitation to take part in the survey was sent to a selection of students and instructor selected at the random in order to take part of the study, and the participants were required to electronic colleagues provide their consent. So it was decided that a new study questionnaire was to be developed to facilitate the data gathering the procedure and make it less difficult. So earlier, the survey's responses were used to inform the development of the study questionnaire, which was then sent out to the respondent. A survey form was hosted on Google and was used in order to collect the necessary information. So once the material had been accepted by the researcher, who are professional in the area of medical education and assessed by those researchers, it was sent to the participant by emails and many other social media platforms. So the questionnaire was divided into 5 sections. First, the demographic information for the student and the teachers to focus on the personal information. And the second section was to test the required student to respond for pertaining to e-learning. So the purpose of section 2 was to determine the student overall levels of the knowledge on the topic. And the third component of the survey to study the techniques and motivation of the respondent about the e-learning. So in the last phase of the survey, the question was to evaluate the respondent familiarity with the e-learning platform, so their level of the internet use and the types of electronic devices they own. So in addition, we would question them on the difficulty they anticipated coming across while putting e-learning into the action in their organization. So the last section of the survey, they asked to measure the perspective on how the COVID-19 and epidemic, the lockdown procedure, and the implication of the changes for the classroom teaching had developed over the time. So of course, the survey was given into the medical student to see whether or not the COVID-19 had an effect on their emotion to continue their study or not. And they will plan to pursue the different lines of work on a scale that from strongly agree to strongly disagree. We also do the pilot study to carry out in order to determine the most effective way to carry out the survey. So in total, we have 1,804 individuals. So it's representing 42.3% of the teaching staff and administrative personnel participated in the poll, and only 10.3% of students reported having any kinds of involvement with the online learning throughout their times of secondary school. So the percentage of the student who was acquainted with e-learning was quite low. It's just about 37.4%, as were the percentage of students who were sought help on e-learning is 38.5%. You can see it on the table. So according to the data in table 1, the vast majority of the institution's teaching staff was either fairly familiar with the e-learning, it's about 53.8%, somewhat comfortable with e-learning, 79.6%, and aware of the existence of e-learning facility in the institution, 87.5%. And some of them very knowledgeable about e-learning, 53.8%. Another table is the table 4, and how the COVID-19 epidemic has impacted the schooling and what students are doing to make up for it. So we have some of the item, for example, replace the practical knowledge, file work for medical word, or creative strategy to make up for the lack of practice sections. So most of the teachers think that the theoretical lectures should be replaced with the online tutorials. Almost half of the professors agree or strongly agree, and that online courses may replace in-person instruction for the theoretical topics. 63% to 85% was again using virtual learning to replace hands-on experience. So let's move to the limitation of the study. So I think that the research only included some students from the school, so therefore the finding cannot be extrapolated to other mid-school students. The survey was done at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic when students worried about what would happen to their schoolwork and exam. So this research study has a number of significant shortcomings, the most significant of which were limited sample size and selection process that was not the random. The ability to generalize the finding is hindered by the selection process not being completely random. So either the numbers of participants in the sample should be increased in subsequent study or random selection procedure should be used. The findings of the study also based on the perspectives of the student attending higher rank college. However, the studying the opinion of the student attending lower rank institutions that have less access to the more recent digital technology might provide more critical results. And um, the, ma the majority of the students expressed doubt about the usefulness of online education. So in contrast to the majority of professors who supported wholeheartedly. So lack of access to the internet and lack of computer skill was the primary barrier that needed to be overcome in order to successfully adopt e-learning. Um, and neither our student nor our educator are equipped for online learning because of the lack of preparation or support from the school, from the university is one of the possible factor as the present technical impediment. Additional data indicating that the COVID-19 outbreak has a significant influence on medical school. In light of that, having solid technical and institutional framework for the e-learning is very necessary, especially when dealing with social distance measures. So finally, I think that the traditional teaching approach used in educational institutions on around the globe was significantly altered as a result of COVID-19. As an additional option for the student to continue their education, and the administrators of school, college, and university have elected to use online lectures and courses. Even if online learning is proven to be useful in protecting the health of the student and faculty members during the COVID-19, the effectiveness of online learning is not on par with the traditional learning. So the learning used in the internet cannot provide the expected effects in developing nations because of the great majority of students in this country do not have the access to the internet or for a variety of reasons, including the financial constraint or technological barriers. So this research compare the efficacy with the conventional classroom instruction with that of the online instruction, specifically for students enrolled in higher education. Um, and the student, they also reported that the number of additional challenges in addition for those pertaining to technology and finances. These challenges included a lack of engagement in the teacher in the time and an absence of typical classroom interaction. This finding also suggested that the educational institution have to work on enhancing the substance for their curricular and developing suitable material for use in online lectures. So I have some of the key references for the study. Thank you very much for listening, and I would love to have some of the question if you want.